when you combine a fatty acid like lard or an oil, could be coconut, could be olive oil, when you combine that with an alkaline base, a lye. Now, back in pioneer days, they used potassium hydroxide or potash, which was leached. That means they simply gathered up some burned ashes and put them in a hopper and then ran rainwater over these ashes, and then what came through, usually corn husks, that would kind of act like a sieve, in the bottom would be your lime. And so how they knew the strength of their lime was guesswork. And some people believe that if an egg would float in the lime that has been leached from the potash, that it was strong enough. But again, it was guesswork. Most people today that make soap use sodium hydroxide as opposed to potassium hydroxide. Now, when you combine the fatty acid and the alkaline, these two totally separate molecular structures, when they combine with water, the result is something uniquely different in composition. You get glycerin and you get soap. And the soap that we use today, that we buy at the store, most of the time the glycerin has been taken out and they use it in other products. But if you make your own soap, that glycerin remains behind. And we know glycerin is a good thing for your skin. Now, people, I think, have a misconception about lye soap. They hear stories about how harsh it can be on your skin, but if you do it correctly, it's really not. It's very mild. So there are two different kinds of soap that we make on Pioneer Island. The one that we're going to do tonight is a lye soap. Of course, the other one's lye too. You've got to have lye in order to have soap. If you don't have lye, you don't have soap. But we're going to do lard, sodium hydroxide, and water, which is as close to the Pioneer recipe as you actually can get, unless you want to leach your own potash and get yourself some rainwater and go from there. Plus, you have to get your beef tallow or your lard from your cooking, from your drippings. But anyway, that's what we're going to do tonight. Another one that we do includes the lime, your distilled water, as opposed to rainwater, goat's milk, and olive oil. So there are two different types that we make. We're going to do the Pioneer type tonight. And at some point in the evening, before you leave, I made this soap yesterday, and 24 hours has lapsed, so now it can be cut and it's safe to handle. Now, you don't want to wash with it yet, and you probably need to wash your hands before you lick your fingers, but it's pretty safe, and I want you to be sure and cut yourself a hunk before you leave. I've scored it so that you'll kind of know, what will be even, and you're welcome to wrap it in a paper towel and put it somewhere dark and dry for 3 weeks. So I believe that'll be around the 26th of the month, and it'll be ready to use, okay? So be sure that you do that before you leave. And here's the cutter, paper towel, and help yourself whenever you have the chance. But saponification, or the process of intentionally making soap, goes back to about 2800 BC. What was going on here at the Okefenokee around 2800 BC?
Indian culture.
Yes, the swamp had formed by that time, and we did have Paleo-Indians in the area. Now, soap making occurred in different cultures at different times, the Babylonians being the first to document it. It may have happened in other parts at the same time or before, but there just wasn't any proof. And the proof that we have that the Babylonians did it is clay cylinders were found with soap stored inside. And so they could date the clay cylinders and therefore know that at that point in time, the Babylonians were intentionally saving their soap. The word soap is Latin. It actually comes from the Romans, and the legend was that on Mount Sapo, they would make sacrifices, human, animal, and that the ashes and the burned ashes from the fire would run down the mountain and into the water. And women who washed the clothes in that river discovered that when they washed their clothes at the foot of Mount Sapo, their clothes were cleaner than when they washed them in other parts of the river. Therefore, they were onto something. And so there they went trying to figure out why here as opposed to there. Now that's a legend, there's no real proof, but it's kind of an interesting story. And it probably did happen something like that by accident.
Sapo.
Mount Sapo. So, Sapo, you can see the connection. There are two different processes for making soap, and the pioneers used the hot process, but what most people do today and what we're going to do tonight is the cold process. And the hot process involves a lot of heating of your water and your lye and your lard together and stirring it for a long period of time in a big, heavy cast iron pot. The cold process, actually, your ingredients are pretty cool. They don't have to really have a lot of heat. The only heat that you have to have is to bring down your lard, to melt your shortening, to melt your lard. And once your lard is at room temperature, which is really kind of cool, not the hot process, the cool, then you can combine it with your lye. Now, this is distilled water and sodium hydroxide. It's been sitting for about 45 minutes. When you combine these two ingredients, the temperature goes to about 170 degrees that fast. And the fumes are strong. So when I do make soap, fumes are strong. So when I do make soap with little students around, little children, I try to practice good safety precautions and demonstrate to them, you know, it's really not something to play with. It's not something that you should just do without being really careful. So I do wear a mask when I make it in front of students, and I do wear gloves, and I'm going to put those on in just a minute because it does sting. Now, if you do get splashed, heaven forbid, keep some vinegar handy, and if you spray your hands or wherever you get splashed, it neutralizes the sting pretty quickly. It's still going to burn a little bit, but it'll cut the burn enough that you'll be okay. So, do you have any questions so far about the cold process or about history of soap making in general? Well, I think the temperatures of our ingredients are about right. This has to come down to 100 degrees. And then the temperature, as I said earlier, of your lard needs to be around 80 or room temperature. As long as you hit between like 10 degrees of each other, then they're safe and they're going to combine correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and put on some gloves because those things do burn, especially if you have a cut and they pop in. Not good. And by the way, if you do decide to do this, be sure when you combine your sodium hydroxide and your water that you put your dry ingredient into the wet, okay? Because if you do it the opposite way, you're going to have a lot of fumes in a lot of direction, and this is going to contain where those fumes emerge. Now, what's going to happen here is we're going to emulsify this anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. I timed it yesterday, and the conditions are the same, so it should be about 10 minutes. Once you pour your finished soap into your mold, you need to be sure and cover it, and then contain the